Welcome, everyone, to Mythstorie, a podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryant, here with my lovely permanent guest, Cammy. Hello, Cammy.
Hey, Bryant. How are you?
I'm doing well. Cammy, thanks so much for being my permanent guest, making time for this wonderful show that we have.
Thank you. Thank you for recording it and doing all the actual legwork.
No, well, recording, sure. Well, we're really excited because we have a really fun topic today. But if you're just joining us, Mythstorie is a podcast here where every week we try and find some interesting myth or story to regale to you and then try and crack a little bit some of the history behind that myth and talk through it. And today, Cammy and I, we're both very excited. We're really...
Yes.
Yeah. Quarantining my way through life right now, going through my backlog of video games in my spare time, aside from platinuming Infamous Second Son a couple weeks ago. Thank you. Yeah, it was like two things that I didn't do.
Did you play the other game?
Mm-hmm. I did. Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. The DLC.
Yes, first I platinumed that when that came out. Yeah,
okay.
That was fantastic.
I heard it was really good.
It was better than the main game.
What about the Blood one?
The one that was on PS3.
First Blood or whatever? I don't know. He was a vampire. Or
yeah, that was the old one, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, I play through this, I platinum it, and then I'm like, well, let me go through. I'm like, let me play Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which is the, Assassin's Creed, super famous, set in Victorian London, this one. And I've been enjoying, especially last summer and the summers before that. Summertime is when I get a lot of audiobooks in, and I enjoyed the Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie novels and things like that, and which are, set in the industrial era and early 20th century. But so the Assassin's Creed Syndicate, super great looking. I'm playing through it, and tons of side missions. Those games have tons of things like that. And there's this great mission where it's a pretty small mission too, but it's like find out the cult of Spring Hill Jack, and you're playing through this mission, and you're going through, and you start it like I think it's like even they tie in Charles Dickens and stuff like that. And I think he's investigating it. And so you find this woman get attacked by this dude with a cape, and you chase him down. And then you go to the sewer, and you find like there's this killer cult. You have to dispatch these four fellows, and so Spring Hill Jack. And I'm like, all right, is this real? What is going on? So I Google it, and thank God he is real. He's extremely well. He's real. He was real in Victorian London. In the mid 19th century, but I implore you, maybe I'll include a picture if I can, but just Google Spring Hill Jack and just take a look at that beautiful picture that is at the front of the Wikipedia page of a 1904 cover issue depicting this basically Batman looking guy. But I knew
an evil Batman. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I knew you, Cammy, would be pleased, and it sounds like you certainly were.
Oh, so excited.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of crime, a little bit of mystery.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, Cammy, why don't you give us a little story of this gentleman?
Sure.
Gentle thing.
So I went to anomalyinfo.com, which I had used previously in the Chupacabra episode, because they have accounts. It's really lovely if you ever want to read a firsthand, basically report of something that happened. So whether it's a law enforcement report or other, you can actually read real documents from the time, they're transcribed to the webpage, but
yeah.
And the entry was 1838, February 20, the Jane Alsop assault.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. While the rumors of Spring Hill Jack had peppered the English countryside, his sightings didn't reach London until the late winter of 1838. In the dead of night, Jane was awoken by a banging at the front door of the house she shared with her sisters and father. She ran to answer before knocking woke up her other family. When she opened the door, she stood face to face with a frantic man who seemed out of breath from a struggle. The man told the girl he was a watchman, and he had managed to capture Spring Hill Jack. He needed to borrow a light from her so he could see to secure the man to his horse. Jane, excited to be part of the action, ran inside and found a lantern as well as a candle. She rushed outside, fumbling with the candle. She handed it to the watchman and ran with him to where he left his horse and the body. When they reached the spot, no horse could be found. She asked the watchman if he thought the man could have taken the horse. He seemed to contemplate that for a moment as he threw down his robe, sighed, took the candle to his chest. His appearance suddenly changed in the candlelight. She could see now that his eyes were red like fire. He opened his mouth, and out came a blue flame that caused the young woman to scream. She tried to run away, dropping her lantern, but Spring-Heeled Jack grabbed her by the neck and began to rip at her gown and flesh with his iron claws. Jane escaped his clutches, but not before he clawed her face and neck. She reached her door, and thankfully her screams had woken most of her house. Her sister grabbed her and slammed the door behind them. Her other sister called loudly for the authorities, but Jack leapt into the night before anyone could make it over.
Wow, so spooky.
Very spooky.
So, oh man, this guy, Spring-Heeled Jack. So he's got springs in his heels, right?
Right. I mean, he's leaping really hard.
Leaping up to 10 feet is what these 19th century reports would say, as high as 10 feet. He's Wolverine. He's got the claws, these iron claws, and this dude can breathe fire. I mean, like, what else do we need from like a Victorian era villain?
Yeah, it's so steampunk.
I know.
It really is.
And it really does kind of show up in a lot of that culture. I'll get into. There's a little bit behind this guy, but I really think he's basically like the precedent to Batman. I mean, like, in all honesty. So Spring-Heeled Jack, 19th century London. We're getting into the Victorian era, industrial era, urbanization like never before. Things are getting crowded. It's getting crazy. And in the early 19th century, there are a few of these urban myth kind of things start happening where people are reporting ghosts or stalking the streets of London and things like that, beating up pedestrians, walking around when they shouldn't be, that kind of thing. A really famous one, a quick side note, is this gentleman, the Hammersmith ghost, which I had to look at this because I was like, why is Wikipedia talking about this? And this was an 1803, 1804 case of a guy. So like, people had been dressing up as like this ghost who believed like it was like the spirit of a suicide victim. And there was this dude who was walking around at night with a shotgun, and someone was wearing white and on their way home, and the guy just like flipped and was like, who goes there? But then like pulled the trigger. And the guy ended up dying, and this actually became a big court case of like, was there like it was a self-defense, a really important self-defense legal case. So anyway, so that kind of tells you like,
so he thought it was a ghost.
Well, he just didn't know. He was just freaking out. He was freaking out, and he had a shotgun, and that's not a good thing to have when you're freaking out. And it was decided no, like, even if it was like they expected, no, there's no ghost. No matter what, there's really no reason you should just shoot somebody at night. There's less reasons than there are actual reasons. So it was a cool legal precedent, but this kind of puts in your mind. So like 1804, this precedent was made. There's these ghosts going on. So, people don't want any of this, but there's a weird sort of legal sense behind it all. So Spring-Heeled Jack, the late 1830s, people believe sort of grew from these ghost sightings. These myths were kind of local at first, like the Hammersmith ghost and things like that. But Spring-Heeled Jack really became like a phenomenon and was cited as like in Scotland, even like mainly known in London and Liverpool, but any urban area he could totally like come around. And yeah, so I mean, Spring-Heeled Jack is called that because he could jump really tall, and if you can do that, you obviously have a spring in your shoes. and there's this cool, so like the Wikipedia article posts like a bbc.co.uk like website, the webpage about it. It's actually not that good, but it does it's like an old archive page. It looks like it's from like 2002. But there's a little thing here. I mean, the name Jack is really prevalent in a lot of like urban myths. And even, I mean, think of Jack the Ripper. There's this guy, Jack O'Kenchurch, a Welsh guy who made a pact with the devil, Jack in the Green.
Well, all the mischievous people, are named Jack too.
Right.
Like
Right.
Jack and the Beanstalk and stuff
Right.
like that.
Exactly. Yeah. If your name's Jack, you're up to no good. I'm sorry. And so he really became this sensation. And it seems like he did target women a good amount, but I mean, it seemed a lot of the victims were. It seemed indiscriminate. But he would sort of just attack you, maul you, and then run away, unless he breathed fire or something like that before he did. And it's noted that he was, by several, at least two people claimed he spoke comprehensible English, is what is kind of said. So I guess
imagine that a man in England
speaking English.
English.
Yeah. Well, I guess that helped sort of like reinforce that it's not like some otherworldly demon,
Okay.
Yeah, because that's what people might have started to believe, was it was a creature. We're thinking like werewolves and stuff like that. But Jane Alsop's case was like the first big one, and was really interesting too. And over time, it's fun because it verged by like 1880s. He was this like media, I guess you could say, sensation. Even in 1867, he was being featured in like serial series, kind of like precedents for comic books and things like that.
Sure. And
he, by the beginning of the 20th century, became like a full-on boogeyman for kids story. You'd say, hey, if you don't go to bed, Spring Hill Jack's going to jump up here and like punch your face out. But he was also starting like in the 1900s. I mean, he was 100% featured in these stories where he was a hero, or where he was fighting other bad guys, and he was going through and he was kicking butt. And so it's really funny, but it kind of, out of these little sort of localized ghost stories, this unified bigger sensation kind of came. And I think it was just sort of a product of urbanization and having these hugely dense populations in these areas. And then stuff happens and people are doing stuff. And I mean, like in the Hammersmith case, I mean, this obviously, if you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, you'd probably get mugged and things like that. But there was more to it than that. People were actually trying to prank other people, dress up as ghosts. And so as far as Spring Hill,
I ran across that. Like, it was almost like some of the encounters were almost like pranks, and then some of the encounters were horrible maulings of people.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's especially hard. There was the Marquess of Waterford was this dude. He was a noble, and he was like apparently kind of a drunkard and kind of crazy too. People like thought it could be him at one point, but I mean, eventually, like, I think it went on for so long, and I think of it as, we did an episode on like the clown sighting kind of epidemic. I kind of think of it as that, where like you're in the 1838, you read about Alfred's attack of this Spring Hill Jack fellow, and the papers, are just want to run anything that'll make you buy the paper. So they pick it up heavy. And then 2 years later, somebody got punched in the eye and they were really drunk and they don't remember, but they thought they heard a cackling. And so they're like, oh, it was Spring Hill Jack who punched me in my blinker, my face blinker. I don't know.
Your
and
blinker?
So, yeah, your eyes. That's the Cockney for eye. I don't know.
Did they have blinkers?
No, but like your eye blinks, so I'm thinking that they call their eyes blinkers in Victorian era London. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm creating a new language.
I was thinking like cars.
Right, yeah. Well, you're not thinking Victorian era. You got to go back in time with me here.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Right.
There's some dim candlelight on the street. I got you.
Yeah, right.
Oil lamps or whatever, gaslight.
And that's what was like. It's so cool because like that's what I'm sad to say I'm not actually really enjoying Assassin's Creed Syndicate because the controls are very clunky, but I just love running around the city and seeing everything and just the aesthetic, like just like my mind's eye thinking of like Spring Hill Jack, whether he's a a negative character or not, or a hero, is just super cool. I mean, because even if you think of him like a hero, I mean, he's literally Batman. Like he's an anti-hero, you know, like and I swear, I mean, just when did Batman actually start? Like the 30s or 40s or something like that. I swear, like whoever, like they saw the Spring Hill Jack and were like, you know what? What if he was rich and had parents and they went to the opera? So sadly, there's no direct connection. I guess that actually kind of makes it more fun because it wouldn't be as mysterious. But there was no direct connection. There was no to any one person.
Yeah, I think it must have been a group of people, or just pranking, like just people.
Yeah.
Maybe there was one guy taking it seriously, and he was like the bad guy doing the bad things. Because all of those like attacks, like brutal attacks, happened in the same time period, right?
Right.
Like within like 10 years of each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mean, there was like a 50-year period where these were happening, but again, eventually, like it became like a fun story. It was Boogeyman for kids, but then it was also like a comic book Pulp Fiction-y kind of thing. Yeah, it was the Penny Dreadful stories, which were almost exactly like that. They were the precursor to Pulp Fiction is actually comic book superheroes is the way Wikipedia puts it, and that's 100% accurate. This urban myth turned into a fun comic booky hero, a Pulp Fiction-y thing through the Penny Dreadful stories that you could buy, and people were totally over it or eating it up in a different way. They weren't scared of it in that sense. I mean, I'm sure people were still getting beat the crap up in London alleys at midnight, but it wasn't someone going, haha, punch, and then jumps really high. It's just cool. Like, because this, it's just this time, like I made it, we were talking about the fire and how that could happen. And I mean, but think about like the poor Jane Alsop trying to explain this, and everybody is just like, she's a woman, she's hysterical, of course, like she's just like there's just nothing you can do about it. Like no one's gonna take it seriously. So it's
they did do a search after. There was a little bit more to this story. They did actually search the town. I mean, they probably didn't believe her. You're right, but they did search for him, and they found two suspects, and neither one of them really. They figured out that they didn't really fit the bill, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there was one like oddity of this man, and I mean, it was a man and like a younger man, like an not old man, but like maybe middle-aged man and a younger man, and they were walking together, and the younger man was helping the middle-aged man, like he had maybe gotten hurt or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought that maybe it was them because the person that, like when he disrobed, I mean, he didn't disrobe, but when he threw off his robe,
right?
The robe was gone when they go back, right? So I didn't write that in the story, but the robe was gone, and this person ran off in the other direction. So they're thinking that there must have been two people,
like a setup of like really thought out, right?
You know what it reminds me of, and this is like no joke, this is like horrible. But the guy in France who would dress up almost like a werewolf, they called him the Beast of something, or wherever he was in France. He would dress up as like an animal, basically.
Mm-hmm.
He'd put on like fur and like a mask, and then he would, I think, sort of like lasso women. I don't know what he used, like chains or a whip or what he was using, but he would kind of like lasso them and be like choking them and drag them back to his basically lair. Sure. It was like a basement room or something in his house, but yeah, it kind of reminded me of that, just like these random attacks by someone who's dressed as, kind of like the devil or a beast or whatever.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, just in my head, it like went towards that. I wish I could remember the guy's name. I'll remember it after we.
No, right, of course. Yeah, it is really interesting, and I like, so the more popular the character became, like that's he I think he, like in the 1838 attack and after it, he wasn't automatically Spring Hill Jack. That was the name kind of given to him later,
right? Yeah,
through the popularization of him and kind of when, I guess you could say, he lost his like genuine scariness, but
Yeah, it
gained
was
it through
almost like
children.
it was just like an urban legend at that point. It wasn't
Yeah,
a real
and
person at that
because
point.
like the Lord Mayor of London was actually summoned like by an anonymous resident, and that's where some of the investigation went in and stuff. So there was, like I said, they did take it seriously. I mean, like, if you write a complaint, they'll look, and rewards were offered for information, but again, nothing in particular. But yeah, I think, yeah, just people like dicking around, and then once the police were actually like, all right, we'll walk around at night with a lantern, they're like, crap, our ruse is over.
Right.
We've been had. So yeah, it's just a super fun thing. There's tons of books written on it, even like faux lore. There's a book in the 70s written, and it has a ton of like poorly cited and just a bunch of just stuff. Yeah, hold on. The Legend and Bizarre Crimes of Spring Hill Jack from 1977 by Peter Haining. It's kind of tons of claims made without sources and things like that. Just fun stuff like that. But there's actually two. This is a free book on Project Gutenberg, posted in July of 2006. It's an anonymous author, and it looks like it was through Gutenberg of Australia. But this is completely free, and you can access it now. And it's a full short story. And I've only looked through it a little bit. I only found it recently. I didn't realize it was here until I just was doing some more searching before we started. But it's a cool little book, and it includes Jane Alsop, and it looks like it's shortly after her attack, and it uses the facts of the time and brings out a little fiction into it all, and it looks like a really cool little story. So if you want a fun little read, I'll link it into the link to the Gutenberg link in the podcast show notes. It's a cool little free book you can devour based off of this guy. So and before we finish, I've got to thank Ubisoft for making Assassin's Creed and giving me this idea. I really appreciate it. It's a really cool way to go, because I was playing like Odyssey, and there's tons which is set in ancient Greece, and I mean, we have tons of ancient Greece podcast episodes now, and there's many more to come, but it's always fun to do something a little different, and this was really, really cool to look into.
Yeah, honestly, like Assassin's Creed, they really do their research. Like when the fires happen in the Notre Dame Cathedral, they had it mapped.
That's right. Yeah, the digital, because for Unity. And they
had never had like a digital mapping of the cathedral, so they were able to use that like as a blueprint.
That's right. That's a really good thing to mention. Yeah. No, it is really cool. And there's even I'm gonna probably play the game a little more. There's the Jack the Ripper DLC you can play without like beating the game, so I want to play that. And I mean, there's definitely an episode we can do right there, because there's still disputes on whether or not, there's a lot of disputes around it. So
I have theories.
Well, then, we maybe a month from now, that'll be the episode we hit upon. So
we'll just do one Jack a month until they're done.
Yeah, that's a lot of Jacks.
It is a lot of Jacks. But there are a lot of Jacks.
Right. So, well, Cammy, thank you for getting that Miss Allison story. Poor girl. I hope she survived
she did.
rest of Victorian London, just the rest of that era. Just
like cholera and whatever.
Yeah, cholera, Spring Hill Jack, being a woman in Victorian era London,
right?
All the hardships that kind of come from it. Well, thank you though, Cammy, again. Thank you everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed this one. We've got a couple fun episodes. We're still quarantining, as you can tell too. I want to keep mentioning that. So we're doing remote recording. Hopefully, I think we've gotten things down pretty well. But mythstorie@gmail.com and our Facebook group are great ways to get in touch with us. If you have any ideas for a show, let us know. Or if you just have any comments, things like that, please let us know too. We're always happy to get some feedback. And I think that does it, Cammy. Spring Hill Jack.